Good morning, audience in Korea, and good evening, audience in the States. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. My name is Junho Yoon, and I'm a commercial specialist in the commercial section at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul, Korea. It is a great honor to be your moderator today, and I'm happy to meet with you virtually at today's webinar. Today's event is co-hosted by AMCHAM Korea and the commercial section at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul, Korea. 3 guest speakers from public and private sector has joined us today, including Korea research-based Pharma Industry Association, KRPIA, healthcare consulting firm Sinex, and law firm Yulchon. I would like to deliver my sincere gratitude to AMCHAM Korea for the effort and time to co-host this event and the speakers who have spared their busy schedule and prepared useful presentations. For today's webinar program, we'll discuss healthcare market prospects, its regulatory landscape in South Korea, and the legal issues related to risk management strategies for healthcare market in South Korea. We will also have a Q&A session towards the end of webinar, so please feel free to type your question in the chat panel, and we will work to answer your question at the end of webinar. Now, I would like to first welcome a commercial officer at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul, Artina Davis, for her opening remarks. Officer Davis, please show up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Regulatory Healthcare webinar. I echo Junho's sentiments and would like to give a big thank you to AMCHAM for collaborating for today's webinar. And thank you also to today's speakers. We here at the commercial section at the U.S. Embassy have had no better partner in helping U.S. businesses expand in Korea than AMCHAM. As the export promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce, we have a network of commercial service offices and embassies and consulates around the world, in addition to domestic offices throughout the U.S., all designed to assist American companies looking to expand in overseas markets. For today's webinar, we have a diverse lineup of experts that will speak on the various aspects of the healthcare regulatory landscape in Korea. We hope you find today's webinar helpful, and thank you for being here in this virtual space.
Thank you, Officer Davis, for the great opening remarks. Now it is my great pleasure and honor to invite the co-host of today's event, Chairman of AMCHAM Korea, James Kim. Chairman Kim, please share a few words for our participants today.
Good morning and good evening. Thank you so much, Artina, for a great opening. And Juno, thank you for the great introduction. You know, for us, it's always an exciting opportunity to partner with the U.S. Embassy. AMCHAM receives a lot of pleasure working with a team at the embassy, and clearly our mission is very aligned, which is to support American businesses in Korea, along with the U.S.-Korea partnership. We have a very strong turnout today. Quite frankly, we have over 150 attendees who have registered. So this makes it a very, very powerful webinar for all of us to learn. I'm also pleased that we have some of the most iconic U.S. healthcare companies joining us today. Johnson & Johnson, Abbott, Pfizer, MSD, Fresenius, and Viatris. And obviously, they're all really big and important members of AMCHAM Korea. The way I look at it, the patient-centric approach in healthcare, such as home care and personalized treatments, have transformed the large aspects of the global business and this marketplace. And I think it's more true in Korea because it's famous not only on active development, but also for its rapid adaptation to innovative technologies. And I look forward to, even for me, learning about the transformation in the healthcare market in Korea and the exciting change that is taking place today. So I hope that today's webinar will serve as an opportunity for all the experts from both Korea and the US to understand the landscape for the Korean healthcare market and to prepare for the changes in the post-COVID-19 era. So again, thank you so much for all the speakers, and of course to my great friends from the US Embassy, Artina for organizing this event. So thank you again. Please hope you can learn a lot, and I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Kim, for your speech. Now, I would like to introduce our first webinar topic and speaker. The first presentation topic is the key market challenges and regulatory landscape of the pharma industry. It will be given by the Chief Executive Officer of KRPIA, Young-Shin Lee. CEO Lee earned her doctorate degree from University of Oregon and has been in the pharma industry for 30 years. She held a position as president and CEO of International Scientific Standards from 2010 to 2015, which is a spin-off company by American Research Institute, Battelle Memorial Institution. Also, she has accumulated various experiences by serving as Senior Vice President and Managing Director from 2015 to 2019 at the Drug Information Association, DIA. Korea is at a crossroads between significantly enhancing and regressing its position in the global pharma market. This presentation covers a high-level summary of the Korean market, including the regulatory landscape and certain challenges that we hope to find pragmatic solutions in the near future, along with a few suggestions. Chief Executive Officer Lee, please show up. Thank you.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. First, thank you to the U.S. Embassy and AMCHAM for this presentation opportunity about Korea pharma market and challenges from the industry standpoint. And also thank you, for the kind introduction. And let me start with a brief overview of the market. Generally, market size has been steadily growing. As of 2019, the Korean pharma market is over 24 trillion Korean won, which accounts for approximately 1.3% of global spending. This 24 trillion market is composed of 2/3 of medicines that are produced domestically versus 1/3 of imported medicine. And 82% of imported medicine is supplied by KRPIA member companies. Regarding employment in Korea, employment in pharma industry has been growing steadily as well, hitting over 100,000 for the first time in 2019. So far, I have talked about pharma market generally. How about the market for new drug development and clinical trials? The Korean clinical trial market represents about 1.1% of the 97 trillion Korean won of the global market. As shown in the bottom left, MNCs and domestic pharma companies have approximately equal share of IND approvals. And in fact, domestic companies had a slightly higher number of approvals in 2019. There were also 357 candidates in clinical trials in 2019, which can be attributed to the continued investment in pharma R&D. If you look at the chart on the right, the blue bar represents the new drugs, orange bar represents IMD or biobetter, and the gray bar represents the generic or biosimilar. As you can see, the generic development is still predominant in Korea. Let's zoom in into the global ETC market. This chart shows the breakdown of prescription market sales divided into 3 country groups, indicated by dotted red line. The bottom bar in navy is for the new drug, which is patented original drug. Sky blue on top stands for LOE, off-patent original drugs. Yellow is branded generics, and brown is unbranded generic product. We can see the Korean market, which is squared off with the dotted line here, okay, is currently focused on generics with the 47% of share. If we focus on new drug, which is original brand, and the first group of countries on the left has in between 45 to 66%. The middle, including Korea, is in between 20 to 28%. And on your right, and those three countries showed below 10%. The A7 countries average is 52%, and as well as similar EU average, which is 48%. By contrast, Korea is 25%. Considering Korea's GDP and development status, Korea should consider bringing more new drugs into the land. This next slide demonstrates new medicine availability in Korean market. As noted in the graph on the left, between 2011 and 2019, 356 new medicines were available. Korea, represented by the yellow bar, only 36% of new medicine were launched. In other words, patients in Korea did not have access to over 220 of these drugs. By comparison, the average of the country listed here is about 48%. The graph on the right showed regulatory approval time, which directly affect the availability of the new medicine. According to the data from FDA, EMA, PMDA, and IQVIA, the regulatory approval process in Korea takes on average 28 months, which is double the time it takes for the A7 countries. Notably, only 5% of the new medicines were available in Korea within 1 year of the first global launch. And as a point of comparison, 31% in Japan and 19% in Australia. Korea introduced only 5%. Dividing further into medicine availability in Korea, here is a breakdown by therapeutic area for 3 country groups: Korea, the A7 countries, and the US. As you can see, there is a room for improvement across the board by see the percentage of each therapeutic area of those 3 groups. And now let me share some of the challenges that we need to overcome in operating our business in Korea. So from this slide, I will go with a few more and talk about some of challenges and I've chosen to share with you today. The first one of the challenges is in the PNR review process. The PNR review process and data requirements for new drugs are well defined in the regulations. However, there has been some challenges in the predictability and transparency of the process. Data speaks for itself. For example, by regulation, PNR process should end in 270 days. But according to HERA data, the process for the cancer drug takes 348 days on average. According to our data, industry data, it takes 757 days for oncology drugs if we count the days for supplementary preparation. In other words, there may be significant delay in approval process, and as such, it is difficult to tell whether and when your drug is granted. In addition, new drug PNR application gets rejected at the subcommittee level without being provided details of the reasons for rejection. And as far as I know, HERA is working on this transparency issue. Another challenge is in recognizing the value of innovation. Both government organization and the industry are working together for patient access to new drugs. However, the current ISA threshold of one-time GDP per capita, which is set a decade, 10 years ago, is too low compared to other HTA countries. Hence, flexibility will help patients for the new drug accessibility. Also, it is time to open up to creative payment models to accommodate the patient's need for accessing new technology-based medicines, such as immuno-oncology, cell and gene therapy that are high-cost medicine. This is the last challenge I wanted to highlight is the lack of fast-track review system. In order to promote drug development, a fast-track review system needs to be implemented and properly operated, similar to how it practices in the US, Europe, and Japan. As you can see in this slide, and regarding orphan designation drugs, orphan drug designation, and all countries, including Korea, has the system exist and operated. And regarding for the promotion of drug development, one example is BTD. And US, Europe, Japan has different name, but the similar system. But in Korea, there is no BTD system implemented yet. And also shorten of the approval review period and exemption of confirmation data, implementation of post-market confirmation test. And those listed countries has their own system to really encourage, develop the new medicine, which is innovative medicine for the patients. But however, Korea, there is a priority review system, but it is not actually operated. And yeah, of course, there is a fast track system, but actually operated like accelerated approval. So I clearly see the gap in between those three countries, that group of countries, and Korea. So we need to promote drug development, adding or launching similar system like Western and even Japan has. This is the last slide I prepared for today. And so far I shared with the very high level of the market of Korea and as well as challenges we are facing our daily operation as an international company and operating business in Korea. And recently the media has introduced a new terminology called vaccine sovereignty, vaccine 주권 in Korean, which refer to how Korea strives for R&D advancement and strive to transform to a leading country in biopharma. In order to get there, I do believe we need to focus on our efforts on first, having globally harmonized regulations and practices. Second, engaging in cross-border collaborations. Third, creating an environment that encourages innovation and that provide appropriate rewards for such innovation. And the last, pragmatic planning with stakeholders. Please keep in mind, industry is a stakeholders as well. And also, I want you to keep in mind that biopharma is a high risk and high return industry. So that's all for today's presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive Officer Lee, for the informative presentation provided. Now, I would like to turn to the second phase of our webinar, The next topic is regarding medical device trends and pathways to market access for U.S. firms, and it will be presented by the chairman and CEO of Sinex Consulting, Yang Kim. Kim founded Sinex Consulting in 2002 in Seoul, Korea. Sinex Consulting assists foreign medical device and pharmaceutical companies, especially in the field of regulatory compliance, to enter into South Korean market. Kim's expertise covers overall healthcare business from regulatory compliance to strategic communication for policy advocacy and commercial operation. Kim will talk about how COVID-19 and medical device industry influence each other in Korea. She will cover how medical device played a role during COVID-19 pandemic and how COVID-19 changed the medical device business environment, including regulatory updates and the market trends. Chairman Kim, please show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yoon, for introduction. I'd like to thank the AMCHAM Korea and U.S. Embassy for having me this great opportunity. I'd like to share my slide first. Yeah, today I'd like to talk about how Korea medical device market changed since the corona pandemic. I'm going to share with you high-level challenges and opportunities for U.S. firms. Let me introduce Sinex Consulting very briefly. We are the one-stop consulting shop for healthcare market access into Korea. We have been in business for the past 20 years. Now we have about 130 employees, helping medical device, IVD, pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical companies with regulatory affairs, reimbursement approval. This is going to be about 15 minutes high-level snapshot about what COVID-19 has changed in the medical device market and also new regulatory and market access opportunities for medical device suppliers. Let's see Korea as a healthcare market first. Korea is the third largest population in East Asia with 51 million. Korea is the second wealthiest country in East Asia with a GDP per capita $31,000 a year. And Korea is also one of the fastest aging countries in the OECD country with the 8.5 million or 16% of the population represented by senior citizens with age 65 or older. This senior population is going to be going up to 55% until 2030. Korea has a very unique healthcare system, which is characterized by single national public payer operated by central government. Under the program called National Health Insurance, the program, the 4 government agencies are involved, including Ministry of Health and Welfare, HERA, NHIS, and NECA. Korea has the universal healthcare system, which includes mandatory coverage for all citizens and healthcare providers. And in addition, we have a supplementary private healthcare insurance providers, and around 84% of population has annual subscriptions with private payers. However, the standard policies and premiums of the private health insurance is also provided central government. This slide shows you the healthcare service providers in Korea as a medical device business customers. You see a total of 35,000 healthcare service organizations, including general hospital, and clinic. As a medical device market, Korea is proud of $7.8 billion of market size. This represents third largest market in Asia and 10th largest market in the world. And in particular, the interestingly imported medical devices supply 62% of the market. And the growth has been very strong for the past 5 years, representing about the more than 10% of CAGR. The Korea is one of the largest and best organized epidemic control program for the corona pandemic. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, KDCA, has been very good at fast and transparent response to the pandemic corona. And they offered extensive and rapid testing, and people has been shown very good compliance to the hygiene and gathering control policies. As a result, Korea is one of the least impacted country by corona pandemic. Infection rate 0.2%. So far, we have about 10,000 confirmed cases and about the 1,700 deaths so far. The Korean medical device industry has responded very well to the pandemic situation. The first corona test kit was approved by the MFDS in 15 days of the first confirmed cases. So far, a total of 310 products as a test kit approved for domestic and global supply. By corona, the public awareness of the importance of the healthcare technology industry has been rising among the people in Korea. And also, the people recognize the MFDS regulatory agency as the gatekeeper for supply of safe devices. And also, the medical device industry has been acclaimed as a supplier of the life-saving products such as diagnostic kits, thermometers, face masks, ventilators, and syringes, and etc. The Korea medical device industry has also made a significant contribution to medical supply responding to global pandemic. And as you see in slide, the products exported a lot to the global markets, helping response to the COVID-19, the pandemic, with the diagnostics reagents and related goods. As you see in the face masks, hand sanitizers, and personal protective equipment, has been very good, the contribution to the global response to the pandemic. The COVID-19 has provided momentum to accelerate digital transformation for a contactless society in Korea. Korean government announced Digital New Deal policy to invest $2.2 billion on the Digital New Deal, including digital health the platform in 2020, with additional funds to come in the future and as an annual budget. And also the Korean government announced the artificial intelligence strategy to bolster the development of AI domestically. The strategy set the goal of becoming the world's third most competitive digital economy by 2030. Now let's move on to the regulatory changes for the medical devices. Even before the corona outbreak, The Korea set up its long-term ambition to become a medtech developing country from a medtech consuming country. So President Moon proclaimed the Vision 2030 to promote pharmaceuticals and medical device industry, accomplishing the following goals. 6% of the global market, $50 billion export, top 5 major the export industry, and increased so for which the government increased the funding for more than 4 trillion won until 2025 for the establishment of effective regulatory landscape for the medical device technologies. Under such a government sponsorship, the venture capital investment has increased to the healthcare technology innovation. So $1 billion invested in 2019 for medtech innovation, which accounted for the biggest proportion for the most of the recent 5 years. And the regulators, they shared with their lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. The senior MFDS official mentioned in an international symposium at the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, which took place about a month ago. Their lessons as follows. The COVID-19 redefined the role of medical device regulators in the public health crisis, one of which is assurance of the safety and just-in-time supply of medical devices. We also affirm that importance of cooperation with the stakeholders, including manufacturers, laboratories, and other the governments. So as a result, MFDS started its initiative to introduce various programs to expedite supply of medical device products to the market. The MFDS introduced brand new registration to support development of new medical technologies. The one is the Act to Nurture Medical Device Industry to support innovative medical devices back in May last year. So this new legislation introduced a new program, including designation of innovative medical device and designation of innovative medical device enterprises, and modular review, and pre-application consultation, fast-track review. So all these programs to assist the innovative medical devices in gaining access to the market earlier. And MFDS also introduced a new legislation for in vitro diagnostics. The new legislation is the features parallel review for companion diagnostics, lab certification for laboratory developed testing, designation of clinical performance test labs, and introduction of good clinical practice for clinical performance testing. These programs to also expedite the development IVD technologies and the assurance of good quality data for regulatory approval. MFDS introduced additional initiatives by expanding their organizations. They set up new offices for the digital health devices exclusively, and they introduced a pre-submission consultation division, and also they set up expedited review division for drug and medical devices. So they now have 3 new offices to assist the healthcare companies having the product approval in earlier stages. And they introduced new guidelines for medical device industry for digital therapeutics, artificial intelligence and big data based in medical devices, cybersecurity, and innovative software as a medical device. MOHW also introduced the faster market access initiatives for new medical technologies. The health technology assessment program in Korea has been criticized for a long period of time as a hurdle for new medical technology to the market access. So MOHW introduced a few programs to deregulate HTA requirements. Those are the designation of innovative health technology to offer 3 to 5 years for in-market evidence development period. And they also introduced grace period for new health technology assessment. So the companies can have 1 year in-market HTA exemption. And MOHW also set up the policy for first market and after evaluation HTA for IDD technologies. And they also the designation program for research stage technology. So those early stage technologies have an in-market evidence development period at full patient charges. And also about 10 days ago, as of the April 1st this year, the MOHW introduced a new pricing scheme for medical devices, which is reference pricing scheme for expensive service and medical devices. This program will help medical device companies to can charge additional fee for premium technologies to the patient directly. So I like to share my take-home messages for you. The good news is Korea is a passionate technology innovation country. Healthcare innovation is one of the national growth strategies. The funds for technology innovation are plentiful, and all this technology adoption, the population is more than ready to take for more quality of life. Regulatory system for medical device product approval is transparent in both positive and negative ways, I think, and the well-organized and harmonized with the international practices. Government is ready to help better health technologies for earlier market access. And most importantly, public health insurance program benefits the entire population and covers more the cost-effective technology. Challenges to the companies, sorry. Korea has its own pain points in its healthcare system, such as concerns about the rapidly mounting healthcare cost. So my advice is immerse yourself and take part of it. Find your business sustainability within the healthcare system in Korea. Sometimes you need a government approval, even if you want to introduce your product without government insurance coverage. Language and cultural differences are significant in business. So try to read between lines to catch up subtle context and perspectives in relationship with business partners and government agencies. As a rule of thumb, good partnership with in-country companies is the most important. This ends my presentation. I will be more than happy to take your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Last but not the least, I would like to introduce our last webinar topic. Partner Yoon Young-ha from Yulchon will give us the presentation on recent enforcement trends in the healthcare sector and its risk management strategies. Yoon is a partner in the firm's antitrust practice group. Yoon's practice focuses on helping multinational clients, mostly in the healthcare and technology industries, and get through investigations, whether they are investigations by the competition authorities, data protection agencies, or criminal authorities. Yoon's presentation will discuss recent enforcement practices by key regulators, including overall trends and notable cases, and also cover basic tips for U.S. companies. Partner Ha, please show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Junho, for the introduction. Good morning and good evening. I'm very happy to be a part of today's webinar, and thank you to AMCHAM and the U.S. Embassy for organizing this event and inviting me to join today. So I thought it might be useful, particularly for the folks joining from the US, to talk about what's been happening on the enforcement side. I'll go through a few cases, ongoing investigations, to just give you a sense of how the authorities are finding violations, what have been the major trends, and wrap up with some points for companies to watch out for. Overall, enforcement in the last 2 to 3 years has been slow. And with COVID, enforcement's gone quite quiet. The Health Ministry and the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety literally have no resources to commit to any investigations or inquiries into potential regulatory violations. KFTC, the competition authorities, has lost a lot of steam and have not been their usual cruel selves, as it were. And particularly because of COVID and the strain on the economy, the overall policy has been to not kick companies when they're already down. On the criminal and anti-corruption side, the prosecutor's office has been going through some internal conflict, a political spat with the administration, and there's really been no internal motivation recently to rigorously investigate. So recently, you can say that enforcement, particularly anti-corruption and compliance-related investigations, have almost come to a halt, especially compared to what the situation was just a few years ago. And one example of this, of lax enforcement, is the Korean version of the Sunshine Act. Since about 10 years ago, since about 10 years ago, the government has steadily been bolstering anti-corruption laws for our industry. The Health Ministry amended the Pharma and device laws to put in place Korea's own version of the Sunshine Act. Now, under the Sunshine Act, companies are required to keep detailed records of benefits provided to healthcare professionals during a given fiscal year in the form of aggregated expense reports that must be prepared within 3 months after the end of each fiscal year. There's no public disclosure requirement, but companies do have to keep them readily available for 5 years. So if the Health Ministry asks for it, they can be submitted. Now, the MOHW, together with the criminal authorities, had planned to conduct a pretty comprehensive status check 1 year after the law, but they haven't followed up on this. Like I said, MOHW currently, they don't have resources to put to this, and the prosecutors, with their internal issues, they don't seem to have any appetite. This is not to say that the issue has been forgotten. And when the COVID situation stabilizes, we expect the MOHW and the criminal authorities to circle back to this. Against this general backdrop of loose enforcement, continuing on that theme, while the Food and Drug Administration is mostly preoccupied with COVID-related matters like expediting approvals for treatments and vaccines, the ministry recently found a major GMP violation that I wanted to share with everyone. 2 CMOs, they changed the formulation with new additives, didn't get permission, and then went so far as to falsify manufacturing records. So this is pretty egregious. The ministry ordered manufacturing and sales suspension, as well as a recall. The criminal investigation unit inside MFDS, which is overseen by the prosecutor's office, opened their own investigation, including a search and seizure of the manufacturing plant, and that's currently ongoing. MFDS has, with this case, committed to stricter enforcement of GMP violations, including installing a dedicated unit to carry out random inspections, as well as putting in place a tip line for anyone to anonymously report GMP or quality violations. So we expect to see more activity there. MFDS also plans to amend the regulations so that harsher penalties will apply to intentional GMP violations, including imposing fines as calculated as a percentage of the revenues generated from the violation. KFTC, the competition authorities, is a perennial enforcement favorite. Historically, as many of you know, they've been active in regulating kickbacks to doctors and other healthcare professionals. And their activities actually spurred further investigations by criminal and other authorities. While compliance in this space continues to be on their radar, in recent years, they have not targeted this industry, the life sciences industry as a whole, to investigate kickbacks. And with the amendments to regulations to strengthen penalties for kickbacks, the industry codes, interactions with healthcare professionals has become a less critical issue. So while the regulators don't think that the problem has been solved, and companies, particularly local companies, have been finding novel ways to provide improper benefits. Recently, just the overall position of the regulators is that they're happy to investigate if a case arises, but won't treat this issue as a serious industry-wide epidemic. So with that in mind, and also keeping in mind that they're, though not as active, nearly as active in recent years, and especially since the pandemic, the competition authorities has found new avenues to regulate the space. And recently, the KFTC decided its first case on abuse of IP rights by filing a sham patent claim to block or delay generic entry. The investigation actually came about from an industry survey that on the exercise of IP rights that KFTC conducted in 2017. And in addition to imposing an administrative fine, and the amount is considered pretty hefty for this type of violation, the company was criminally referred, and given the facts, indictments are quite likely. We do expect the KFTC, through their recently created division to specifically monitor the knowledge-based industry, which includes bio and pharma, to continue monitoring possible IP rights abuse cases. And this is included in KFTC's 2021 work agenda. And while the KFTC had this particular case in mind when they prepared the agenda, given the amount of press coverage the case has generated, we do expect KFTC will continue to look into IP rights abuses. We thought this ongoing case here on potential business interference by a medical device was worth mentioning, because the KFTC essentially took issue with the company that has taken great pains to put in place a very robust compliance system. So the case came up on KFTC's radar because a terminated distributor filed a complaint alleging multiple violations. After a couple of on-site investigations, numerous RFIs and employee interviews, the KFTC is focused on a couple of issues, and one of them is this possibly overly intrusive audit rights of the company. Now, the company had reason to audit the distributor because it has an internal metric that measures compliance risks in distributors and other business partners that it deals with. They wanted to audit the distributor, but the distributor refused. The company notified that this was actually grounds for termination based on the agreement they had. And then the parties did try to end the relationship amicably, but the distributor asked for a large sum of compensation. And the company refused, terminated the agreement, and the distributor promptly filed a complaint to the KFTC. The KFTC's investigation into the specific audit of the terminated distributor expanded into an investigation into the company's entire audit practices, with the authorities requesting to review audit notices, reports, the type of information that the company asks for its distributors during an audit, and of course audit clauses in all of their agreements. Because the company had reason to believe that the distributor was engaging in improper practices. They thought there were corruption issues. It wanted to exercise its rights to audit that were based on on the company's uniformly applied global compliance standard. And you would think that this is a good thing. But interestingly, this rigorous compliance program may potentially violate Korean fair trade laws that prohibit business interference of distributors. So I just wanted to say that auditing distributors is a double-edged sword. Manufacturers have to strike a delicate balance. There's always legitimate reasons to audit distributors that are perceived as a compliance risk, but the audits can't overstep bounds. They have to be carefully scoped so that if there is a compliance issue, targeted evidence can be found. To later give manufacturers justification to terminate. And a simple refusing an audit can't be grounds to support immediate termination. I thought this point about the co-fair mediation process was worth including here because in the last couple of years, distributors, agents, contractors have really started to go the mediation route for disputes with multinational companies. This used to be a tool that was mainly utilized by small and medium-sized Korean companies who felt aggrieved vis-a-vis the larger Korean conglomerates. But now the distributors are petitioning co-fair more and more to help them settle with multinational and global companies, and I've seen this trend get more frequent in the last 2 years or so. So if you file a complaint with the competition authorities, your role is essentially over. The case now becomes the KFTC trying to find a violation. If a distributor wants compensation, they have to separately file a claim with the court. With the co-fair process, the Korea Fair Trade Mediation Agency, which sits under KFTC, the agency will only look at violations to the extent that it might be able to find pressure points to try to find a number that both parties are willing to agree on. So in many cases, this tactic of using the mediation process works because the distributor doesn't want to walk away with nothing, and the supplier manufacturer wants to avoid the risk of the co-fair process ending without a resolution and possibly a complaint being filed with the competition authorities, which could potentially lead to a prolonged investigation. So the process is really designed to incentivize parties to find their bottom dollar to avoid certain risks. And because of that, although the decision by the committees within the agency is not binding, in many cases the aggrieved party walks away with some compensation. So I wanted to give you a snapshot of the enforcement activities that have been going on recently. And as I said earlier, on the whole and post-COVID, enforcement has been very slow. Korean regulators, particularly the criminal authorities and the competition authorities, they're quite aggressive when it comes to investigation tactics, when it comes to investigations in general. And though it is getting better, regulators are not as sensitive, shall we say, to due process rights in Korea. And right now, because there is this sort of lull in enforcement, the regulators expect that companies and individuals have also become more lax in terms of compliance. So when the COVID situation is resolved, the authorities may be keen to sort of swing the pendulum all the way to the other side very quickly, and aggressively investigate to make up for lost time, and in a sense redeem themselves for missing out on violations. So with that in mind, when the COVID dust settles, we might experience a very sharp uptick in the number of investigations from all different authorities. And to prepare, it would be useful to look into a small scale internal compliance review to check the status of compliance in your companies. But if that's something that might be difficult to take on right now, during this lull, companies might want to check the status of their internal and external relationships. So this list here, it's intuitive and in a way obvious, but this basic taking inventory of relationships is something that companies can do fairly easily, just by asking questions internally to collect data points to see where the potential vulnerabilities lie. And because in many cases, investigations are triggered by tips, complaints by competitors or disgruntled ex-employees. So checking the status of business relationships, leveraging internal business resources to try to check the status of your business partners' relationships, and taking stock of key documents like major agreements. These are some fairly easy things that companies can do, and they won't get you all of the answers, but it will allow you to take a big picture inventory to sort of help you narrow down where the risk areas might be. So I think I have taken up all my time, and just wanted to say thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Partner Ha, for the informative presentation provided. We're running a little late, but wanted to have a brief Q&A session for those who have asked their questions at the chatting panel. Okay, so it seems like we have a question at the chatting panel. The question is regarding the Digital New Deal policy, which was dealt at the second presentation by Chairman Kim. So I would like to kindly ask CEO Kim to answer the question.
Okay, thank you for the question. I don't think I'm the expert on the cloud, the system. So and also I'm not sure about how digital New Deal policy is related to the CSAP regulation. So I should study more about the details of the digital New Deal policy programs, and then the relations to the CSAP regulation. And that is my comments.
Okay, thank you very much for your kind answer. So it looks, okay. So there was a answer back from the question. All right, so it looks like we almost arrived at the end of our webinar today. Thank you, audience in Korea and the States, for joining us today. I hope to meet with you at the next webinar program again. Thank you and goodbye.